That's when my ordeal began. 2 years, in the custody of various people who are now running the government in Syria.
Now, tomorrow marks the first anniversary of the fall of Assad's regime in Syria after more than half a century. A year later, the country remains deeply fractured. There's violence, factional conflicts, millions are displaced from their homes, but Syria survives, and its new leaders are cautiously being readmitted to the international community. Its president is Ahmed al-Shara, who was formerly a jihadist and a member of Al-Qaeda. Now, our next guest was captured and tortured by the group that he led in 2012. He's a journalist, Theo Padnos, and he joins us now. Good afternoon, Theo. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
Let's start with your capture back in 2012. What were you doing in Syria at the time, and how were you captured?
I was attempting to be a freelance journalist, and I was captured because essentially I gave myself to three young men who introduced themselves to me as opposition-friendly journalists in Turkey, where I met them. And we crossed the Syria-Turkey border. This was in October of 2012. And shortly after we crossed over the border, they took me into custody. They announced that they were members of Al-Qaeda. In fact, they weren't. But I escaped from these young men, and I went straight to the Free Syrian Army, which was allegedly on the side of the West, or diplomacy, or democracy, or something like this. And they called up the chief Al-Qaeda figure at the time in that place, who was Mohammed Adnani, the famous architect of the attacks in Paris against the Bataclan, the Stade de France. So this character came to pick me up, and that's when my ordeal began. 2 years, in the custody of various people who are now running the government in Syria.
Let's deal with your capture. How did your capture come to an end? How were you freed?
I was freed through the intervention of Qatar. They were in touch with some of these people, and they paid a ransom, and I'm free, and I'm alive. Otherwise, I would not be free or alive.
So, Theo, how did you feel when it became clear that Abu Muhammad al-Golani, now known as Ahmed al-Shara, would be taking over as Syria's leader?
I mean, look, there's some joy in this, but it's also, I don't think it's not a stable situation, and it's not something you would recommend for anybody. I mean, the power that is behind Ahmed al-Shara is a religious power, and what has occurred is a religious revolution, although it's not genuinely recognized. But these people are fundamentalist Muslims, and they're not all under the direct control of their leadership. Perhaps if they were, things would be better, but they're taking their instructions from God. And this is the reason that the minorities are being killed, and people are shooting up congregations and blowing up churches and setting fire to the minority-owned businesses and kidnapping the minorities and massacring their citizens. I mean, yeah, it's when anybody who is friends with a member of a minority, a religious, like a member of one of the minority religions in Syria, is now getting calls saying, "Help me get out." And they're afraid. I mean, you cannot call up the government and say, "Hey, help me," because these are the guys that will come and burn your house down.
I know this is a very crass question to ask, but do you think that the state of Syria now is better or worse than you had before? I
mean, let's say that there's like hope in a way that there wasn't beforehand, because Bashar al-Assad was it was a frozen country. Nothing was happening, and there was great injustice occurring before the revolution. I mean, people were disappeared systematically, and every family had a member who had disappeared into the Syrian gulag. So I wouldn't say it was a just dispensation, but it was a stable dispensation. And then the West and the Gulf countries started flooding that country with weapons, and the weapons fell into the hands of the fanatics, and now the fanatics are in control. They're trying to be nice, and maybe they are nice, some of them. But, in this sort of situation, each pickup driver is taking his marching orders from the Quran and from God. This it's not what we would hope for a pathway to a stable society. But the more we invest and bring these people, like the stuff that we can bring them, which is money and expertise in healthcare, for instance, and in schooling, the more we like allow Syrians to come to our universities and study, the more hope there'll be for that country.
So do you think this hope is genuine? Do you think there is a future direction that Syria can take? And do you think that the new leader, President Ahmed al-Shara, is the right person to get them there?
It's not really for me to say, but it would be, imagine telling a group of people whose families have been killed by this character, al-Shara, and his men. Hey, listen, he's going to be nice now. They say, no, thank you. I'm not going to take that risk. In the spring, like thousands of pickup trucks descended on the Alawite homeland, which like the homeland of a minority religion in Syria, and indiscriminately murdered women and children. And there's no guarantee that these trucks will not come again. It's not really clear why they came in the first place. Very few of those people have been brought to justice, if any. It's just a dangerous situation if you do not subscribe to the conventional Orthodox view of Islam. Or if you're a Christian, for instance. I mean, there's some maybe 600,000 Christians in Syria who were quite well protected under the Assad regime, and now nobody's looking out for them. And every once in a while, a church is burned, or some suicide fanatic comes in and opens up his machine gun on a congregation of worshipers, as happened this past summer.
Theo, thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for telling us your story. Thank you. Theo Padnos, journalist who had been captured in 2012 by the same leader who is in charge of Syria today.
حرة الحمد لله الحمد لله حاج قدام الباب الخارجي ويل اطلع
يا عالم معاه اموال كثيره الشارع رفعت الكاميرا لفوق. ضدهم خلص.
لك انت عم تحكيني على البيت تبع شو اسمها هي، لا اتذكر شو اسمها. اسكو بدك اسكو 39.
عالنابت 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 عالكلاوي عالكلاوي